Hello and welcome. Thank you very much to the Education on Fire show. Very much looking forward to being able to bring some information to you and the chance for us to have a wonderful conversation. And today, as you saw there, we're going to be talking with the Literacy Lab. And this is going to be a very interesting conversation because there are lots of things that I wasn't aware of that through my sort of conversations and reading up have really been quite fascinating, but also at the same time slightly frightening as well. So it's such an amazing job that they're doing. So I'm looking forward to sharing all about that very shortly. So this is kind of the main area of what we're going to be talking about. The idea that you can't have STEM without literacy, and to be quite honest, you can't really have anything without literacy. I think is such an important point. Certainly, even for myself as a musician, the amount of writing you have to do, the amount of ability to be able to communicate in any way, as we all know, is such an important thing, and starting from such a young age. So yeah, really delighted to be able to dive into that very shortly. So, as you know by now, we're a few weeks into these live shows. This is what we're sort of doing here. We want to be able to share the essence of what Education on Fire is, the chance to share the podcast. We're now at sort of nearly 370 episodes, which is just incredible. Also, a chance to share your work as well. If you're in watching live and you want to share the work you're doing, you want to share what you're up to, some comments of what we're talking about, please do just write them in and we'll be able to bring those up. If you've got any questions for Heather when we chat in a moment, please do that. We're going to have a chance to go backwards and forth from there as well. So leave them in the comments and I can always bring those up onto the screen and we'll have a chance to discuss those and share your thoughts as well. I've got a few things related to last week. The BBC Teach team have got some things coming up related to remembrance and anti-bullying week. So I'm going to share with those some interviews as well. And of course, we've got our guest and a chance to share with the Literacy Lab. So just in case you haven't had the opportunity or you haven't followed or subscribed, depending on the platform and what they ask you to do, this is the place to go, and wherever you like to listen, whichever platform you prefer, educationonfire.com/listen takes you to this page, and there you can subscribe and follow whatever it is that they ask you to do for the audio podcast. And as I said, we're sort of nearly at sort of 370 episodes in the next couple of weeks. So it's such a fascinating journey. And also, if you have listened to this week's, for example, or one that you've listened to recently, please do put that in the comments as well, because I'm delighted to hear your thoughts on those as well. In terms of the YouTube channel, please do make sure that you subscribed and also you hit that notification bell. So should we decide to go live at a different time than Tuesdays, 7:30 here in the UK, and obviously a bit earlier in the day, depending on where you are in the world, you get the chance for that to be notified and to come through, and it gives you the opportunity to catch anything which is sort of unscripted or unplanned. And certainly coming up to Christmas, there might be one or two little things for that and one or two giveaways I'd like to do as well. So yeah, please do make sure that you've done both of those things. So in terms of the podcast that went live this week, as you can see, is 367 was the episode number. Positive Mindset Habits for Teachers with Grace Stevens. And as you can see, she was a former corporate girl who then sort of well into her career decided that she wanted to be a teacher and went into giving her best at that for a long time as well. And now she's decided that she can help teachers in terms of the way they show up and the way that they can handle themselves and sort of thrive in their teaching jobs. And I just love her mantras. You can see there, your energy teaches more than your lesson plans. And I think that's one of the things that comes through in almost everything that we talk about here on the podcast, in terms of the people that have made the most difference are very much the people that have made you feel something, or the way that you've come across to pupils. And so, yeah, it really struck me that was such a great thing. I think it's why it's such a great conversation. So in terms of last week's episode with BBC Teach, there's a bit of follow-up and information I wanted to make sure that you had. If you go to the description of this video, we've got links to everything I'm about to talk about here. So don't worry if you can't catch all of these different pages. Just go to the description and you can click straight through. But you can see here that there is the possibility for you to get hold of some of these micro bits as we're going through. It's an amazing initiative. There are lots of them there that are available for you. So if you're in primary school and you're sort of looking into how that's going to work, please do click through, make sure you make the most of how that's going to be. And as we sort of saw last week, the opportunity and the way that it's working and the way that you can support your children within the school are just incredible. So yeah, do make the most of that opportunity. Now, some of the other live lessons which we talked about, the BBC Teacher doing, and Alex I thought was fantastic last week, sort of sharing all of this. These live lessons are, as you can see, they're coming up. Again, you can click through the links in the description. But Anti-Bullying Week, obviously coming up in the next couple of weeks here, gives you a chance to get involved, find out what's going on, and yeah, really do. Hopefully give you that chance to really sort of make the most of that opportunity to see how those things are going to be going. And the other one, of course, is Remembrance. And there's a live lesson next Wednesday. So again, links are going to be in the description. But just wanted to make sure that you're aware that these things were happening, and some of the information that you might want to check out and make the most of. So enough about all the things that we have been doing and the things coming up. We are here to talk about the Literacy Lab. So I'm delighted to be able to bring on Heather. Thank you so much for being here, Heather. I really do appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to everything that you're going to be able to tell us about the Literacy Lab, but also in terms of sort of your journey with it as well.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for having me. I'm just thrilled to accept the invitation, and I love the opportunity to talk about the work that we do, and it's great to meet you as well.
Fantastic. So those people that maybe haven't come across the Literacy Lab before, in terms of where you are in the world, the sort of people that you're serving, and a kind of a sort of a potted history of what it is that you're able to support people with.
Sure. So the Literacy Lab is a US based nonprofit. We were founded in Washington, D.C. in 2009. And we have now grown. We are in 9 locations across the country. And our focus is really to be able to provide students in communities experiencing racial and economic inequities with evidence-based and culturally responsive literacy instruction. And we do that working with students from age 3 through 3rd grade to really be able to provide that foundational literacy support, because we know that that really makes a transformative difference in terms of how students then move through not only their academic careers, but their lives thereafter. And so we do that through our Leading Men program, which I know you spent time talking with some Leading Men folks before. That program is also a workforce development program, because we're really excited to be able to work with young men of color ages 18 to 24 and really be able to expose them to a career in education through them supporting the literacy development of our pre-K students. And then kind of on the other side of our programmatic work, we are an AmeriCorps program. So we have AmeriCorps members who are working with students doing traditional literacy tutoring, again, from age 3 through grade 3.
And the thing that I found amazing is, as I mentioned sort of in that introduction, in terms of grade 3 is such an important marker for how people then progress on, or how their sort of grades and their literacy levels appear in high school. You sort of always have that sense of, oh, at any point, things can take off or you can change. And that is true. But it's interesting that sort of 70% of people, where they are at grade 3 relatively is where they are later on.
Yes, because grade 3 is really where we learn all of the foundational skills. And then once we hit grade 4, we're really asked to apply them. And so if we don't have that foundation, we don't really have those skills under our belt. Once we're asked to read complex tests, we're asked to do more comprehensive kind of work. We're asked to apply skills across different disciplines. That is when we really start to see gaps for students when they have not fully gotten all of those skills firmly under their belts.
And I think sometimes it's hard to realize that you've got those gaps, isn't it? I certainly remember sometimes you sort of see people or hear people, and it's that kind of, when do people learn this stuff? It's that kind it obviously passed me by at some stage, or I didn't get the opportunity, or I didn't get the attention that I needed at that time. And you kind of think, how's that possible? But I guess, like I say, depending on where you are in terms of where you live and your social economic status, your family life, there are all sorts of reasons why you might have been struggling or missing out on those early years.
Absolutely. And that is something that we talk about a lot at the Literacy Lab. We talk about the schools that we work with and the communities that we work with as being under resourced. And when you are under resourced, you are less likely to really identify along the way where these gaps are showing up and how they are impacting young people. And it unfortunately, because I've worked with older students throughout my career as well, where I've been able to work with high school students, incredibly talented, just so capable, but really stopped developing around a sixth grade level in terms of reading. And so when they are then asked to access different kinds of high school level texts and high school level concepts, they do not have the skills. And so one of the things that I saw a lot with students is that students will end up saying, well, I'm just not a good reader. Like, you don't know if you're a good reader because we didn't provide you with all of the skills, right? You could be an excellent reader. You were not shown different ways. And I will say this is actually something that I've heard our leading men fellows say. No one ever taught me this.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. I'm learning this now that I'm going to be a tutor with our, pre-K students. And I don't think anyone ever taught me this. And I've heard our tutors on the AmeriCorps side say the same thing, right? So it happens very regularly in under-resourced communities that these gaps kind of go on and they widen and then they cement and they really end up being articulated into a student's sense of their capabilities, which I think is one of the most disheartening things that happens within our systems of education. They don't see themselves as bright and capable and talented. They see themselves as not a good reader, or sometimes they see themselves, as I've heard students refer to themselves as, well, I'm just not smart. And I'm like, you're incredibly smart. We have not given you all of the tools that you need in your toolkit.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And take us into sort of the people that are sort of helping you sort of develop it and be part of the program. And I'll show a few pictures as well of sort of some of these things in actions as you're going into that.
Yeah, so I just feel incredibly fortunate to work with such an amazing team of professionals at the Literacy Lab. I joke a lot. We are a mission aligned group of former educators. Most of us have taught, whether it's some of us have experience in higher education, some of us taught high school, some middle school, and some in the elementary and pre-K space. So we have really a range of knowledge across the organization to be able to understand what is happening in our systems of education and say, what is our response to that in terms of what we provide to students, but of significant importance is what we provide to tutors and fellows, because those are the folks who go into schools and work with our students every single day. And so one of the shifts that we have made as an organization since I've been a part is saying, we serve students, but we also serve the tutors and fellows. If we are not thinking about doing our very best on behalf of the tutors and fellows every day, there's just no way we're giving the very best to our students every day. And so we have a team of folks who are regional leaders supporting the implementation of the work. We have teams of folks who are really focusing on the program design and program evaluation. And then we have our amazing folks who are raising funds to make sure that we were able to do this work. And then we also have our folks in like operations and IT who are really making sure that the engine is running and that everyone who is working with the tutors, fellows, and students has what they need to do the work.
And I love that kind of real sort of community feel of how everyone fits in sort of into each of those sort of spokes, as it were, into the entire wheel. So, can you take us into sort of your journey of that? You know, in terms of your sort of previous professional history and that difference between, like, say, being CEO and sort of leading this kind of organization, and I guess maybe some of the lessons you learned when you were sort of earlier in that development.
Yeah, well, I was a teacher, like many of us, as I just mentioned at the Literacy Lab, and so I have taught middle school, high school, and at the college level. And one of the things that really spoke to me about the Literacy Lab is seeing the gaps along the way for students as they move through their education and the impact on them, the impact in terms of that self-esteem that I mentioned, that sense of self. But also I spent a lot of time looking at what does this mean for students in terms of high school completion? What does it mean in terms of college acceptance and enrollment and persistence, right? And there's a direct line to all of these things. So I spent time as a teacher in schools. I also spent time first kind of teaching and leading a single program in the nonprofit space, and then really evolving into leading multiple programs. And then somehow I ended up kind of on an operations and HR side and really focusing on the people who are doing the work with students. So I started off kind of as a program director, and then I moved into a space where I was really studying the academics and program evaluation that we are providing students in an organization called Buffalo Prep back in the day. That was my first nonprofit organization to really match what we were doing in terms of our curriculum and instruction for the schools that our students were then going to go to at the high school level. We were working with 7th and 8th graders. And then moving to Boston and really starting a journey with City Year, which was a really great opportunity, such a large nonprofit organization. And that was a really great learning experience as well. And my first AmeriCorps organization that I worked with as well, and still very much in that programmatic space. And then moved over to an organization called uAspire in Boston that is focused on college access, something I've always been really passionate about. We have a massive student debt crisis in this country, which is something that maybe I can come back and talk about sometime, and really supporting students in navigating that. And I started off being vice president of equity, really thinking about how that organization was centering equity and inclusion, and then quickly moved into a chief of staff role. I had no idea what a chief of staff did, but I said, I am a team player. I will use my transferable skills and I will figure it out. And it was really a role that I absolutely loved. And I think it's a huge part of why I stepped into this role. When the person who was CEO was leaving uAspire, he is still a close friend. He is my mentor. He really believed in me, respected me as a person and as a professional. And I said, well, you know what? Maybe he's leaving because it's time for me to do something like this, even though I didn't really see myself or my lived experience reflected in a lot of CEOs. Well, maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why I'm kind of being pushed at this point in my life to think about doing this. And it was very shortly after I kind of made that decision that I found the literacy lab. And I knew that this is where I want to be. It's like, an organization founded by teachers. There's a teaching and learning model here. It's focusing on foundational literacy skills that I've learned really set us up for everything that we do in our lives. And I want to be part of this. And I just fell in love with the organization and the team immediately. And when I was offered the position, I said yes on the spot. And it has been just a joy and an honor and a privilege every single day.
And the reason I love these conversations is the fact there'll be people out there thinking, yes, that it's hard to know where that journey starts and finishes and ends. And like we say, a lot of the kind of the toing and froing to where you get to, it's never a straight line. It's opportunities, it's a gut feeling, it's a conversation, and all of those things. And I think, like you said about sort of student debt, it's that kind of we need to have conversations really early to explain we don't know what the path is going to be. You want to keep your options open. Whatever they are, that needs a certain amount of planning, a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of support by your community, whether it's your family, whether it's in school, whether it's sort of your local community and clubs and things that you might be involved in. And I think just having that in your mind, whatever age you are and whoever you are supporting, is such a key factor.
I could not agree more. I think that I've reflected a lot in my life on my mother did not go to college. She had me. She kind of had a choice between, at the time, felt like it was a hard line between going to college and having me. And she chose to have me. And so before I knew what college was, I knew I was going to college. And I'm really, really grateful to her for really putting a lot of emphasis on my education, because I know that has definitely helped me throughout my life. It's been able to support myself and my daughters, through their lives. And I really made the commitment to say, like, my mother had certain privileges that she leveraged to open different doors of opportunity for me. And how do I use my privileges to open different doors of opportunity for parents who want the same things for their children that I want for mine, but haven't had the same privileges and access and opportunities that I have had? And that's just something really important for me, to be able to look back on my life and know that I didn't just use my privileges to kind of further my goals or my daughter's goals, that I actually used that for the greater good as well.
Yeah, I love that. And so we'll sort of dive into the side of STEM and literacy in just a moment. But I think what would be nice is to actually hear a little bit from some of the people that are actually delivering some of these programs as well. So let's just share a little bit about this. It's just a couple of minutes of people that are sort of integral to the delivery of what Literacy Lab do.
I graduated from college. I had a lot of options, but I knew I wanted to make a difference.
When you're coming out of college, that first year is so important in what you choose to do and where you go. I knew I wanted to work in my community and change lives, but I just didn't really know how. What made Reading Corps unique was that it offered one-on-one instruction.
We're gonna read a story today. It's called Dogs Can Help. So why don't you put your finger on top and begin.
I'm given the skills needed to make a difference. You see them, you talk to them, you can directly communicate what you want from them, and they grow.
There were no peas on the table, but there were carrots.
My kids have gone from reading 30 words per minute to 60 and 70 and some even over 100 words per minute. Gives them self-confidence to attack other subjects.
Nice.
I'm going to give you 1 more minute to read, and at the end I'm going to ask you, who is this story about? All right? And begin.
You're working with these kids and you really start developing these relationships with them, and you really start finding out more about them and more about the community that you're serving.
Look at that. All the way to the very top again.
I like reading with Mr. Cannell a lot. When Mr. Cannell comes to my class, I feel happy.
Give me a high five. Oh, that was amazing. Yes, 153 words.
This word is figured. What word? Figured. Yes, not found. Yes, figured.
We work on some words that I missed. She helped me practice them. I look forward to seeing Miss Faye every day at school.
The impact that you'll have on students is tremendous. If someone told them they can't read, it means to them that they are able to do it.
It's an experience I don't think you'll be able to find anywhere else. It really does feel like you're changing a life. Will open doors for you no matter what you want to do in life. Now I want to be in education, and Reading Corps really helped me to discover that.
It's pretty awesome. You'll be able to say you made a difference. No matter what, you made that difference. My name is Faye Dunstan, and I'm a Reading Corps tutor.
My name is Juan, and I'm a Reading Corps tutor.
And I think that really just sort of shows, like you were mentioning before, sort of the community aspect, but the two-way street. You're helping everybody that's involved. It's not just a question of, like you say, helping young people to read.
Absolutely. I think we really value our partnerships with our the schools that we work with, and it has to be a collaborative approach in order to figure out a plan for each student that is going to take them from where they are and help them make measurable progress. And that's going to be different for every student. Students are starting at different places, even at the same grade level, right? Like, they are starting at different places. And so we can't just say, okay, well, this is what we do for third graders, this is what we do for second graders. We have to look at, where do we start with this particular student based on where they are in their skill development? And so some students are going to start with some kinds of instruction versus other students are going to start with different kinds of instruction. And that really is a partnership between the data that we collect and the data that the school has, and also just the important information that the school has about different students to really collaborate and create a really important picture, so that the tutors and the coaches can say, okay, this is going to be the plan for this student, and we're going to continue to monitor progress and see when it is time to move them to the next set of skills.
And I think that's, it's the essence of personalized learning, isn't it, as well? It's that sense of what you need now is what we're going to try and find a way to help deliver. And it's very difficult in sort of a mass education system and, a class of 30 or 40 or whatever it happens to be. And so when people are working together and you've got organizations and groups of people who can actually do that and actually spend time, and like as we could see in that video there, the personal relationships that are being developed, it's more than just about the learning side of it. It's about the growth from everybody.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that we place a lot of emphasis and put a lot of care into what is the education and development for our tutors and fellows. Again, not only because they are going in and serving the students, but also because we want to provide that for them. This is also a professional development opportunity for them. We hope that many of them will fall in love with teaching and learning, and that we have provided them with important skills and an important foundation for whatever their next step is, whether it is in education or whether it is, another field where some people will say, like, that was great, and I don't think I'm meant to be a teacher, but I want to be in some sort of youth serving focus in my career. And I have these different skills and competencies that I can take with me to be able to do that.
Yeah, love it. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, if you were watching live and you do want to comment, you want to ask a question to Heather, then please do just write it in the comments and I'll be able to bring that up, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A towards the end if anyone's got any questions or anything they'd like to share. So yeah, please do that at any time, and then I'll sort of navigate that as we head through the rest of the show. So Heather, let's talk about the link between STEM and literacy and what we're trying to do, and sort of how you sort of see those things working together.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've done in the way we set up education is we put things in kind of discrete buckets, and we say, we're going to teach literacy here, and we're going to teach math here, and we're going to teach science here, et cetera. But there are threads between all of those disciplines that you need the foundation in one to really leverage to maximize learning in the other. And without question, literacy is that one piece. So we see an emphasis on particularly encouraging STEM careers and opening up STEM opportunities for young people of color. One of the challenges that I don't think we are spending enough time really thinking about is the connection between the literacy opportunities that those young people have throughout their academic career and what that means in terms of the science, math, courses that they have the opportunity to access, because there's a direct correlation, but we're not necessarily thinking about it. There's a direct correlation in under-resourced high schools that don't necessarily offer some of the courses that are really prerequisites for more advanced work in STEM fields. But even in schools that do, I have worked with many students who would identify as Black, would identify as low income, who are in school settings that are better resourced because they haven't had the same foundation as the more privileged students in those schools. Like, it's great that they get to go to those high schools, but what courses are they taking? And usually when we look, they are not taking the courses that they would actually go to those schools to be able to access. They're not accessing pre-calculus and calculus courses. They're not accessing the higher level chemistry courses. They're not accessing the higher level English language arts and social studies classes, because it all goes back to whether or not they were able to make the leap from I have the skills needed to apply what I've learned, and that switch from learning to read to reading to learn, right? And so we have not connected the dots in how we educate young people and how we talk about the why behind the lower numbers of women and people of color in certain fields. Because you not only can you not have STEM without literacy, you cannot find success in any discipline without having those core literacy skills.
And we were sort of talking about red tape just before we sort of came on air, and I'm interested in terms of what you're hearing about. Businesses obviously are really keen to make sure that children have the skills that they need. You know, like I say, that the sorts of businesses, especially where STEM is an integral part of that, is important for the businesses, it's important for the economy, it's what the governments are saying are really, really important. But are they really sort of taking on board the sorts of things which you're sort of trying to share in order to sort of make that work in those early years? Because I mean, certainly here in the UK, there's talk about having to do maths all the way through to 18. But I think in that same kind of way, if we've missed the boat in the early years, which is a really great foundation here in the UK, it sort of changes very quickly as you start to go up through the years. And like you say, if you've missed the boat already, then it doesn't matter how much time, effort and money you try and plow at the top. Like you say, you've missed the integral part early on.
100%. And I think the question of who is thinking about this and these connection points, I think there's not enough thought about that. I think we have always been, particularly in the US context, we have done things as discrete, independent subjects. And that is not, like, research shows that that is not the way that any of us learn best. We learn best when we are applying skills in different contexts and we are connecting like discrete skills through conceptual learning. And overwhelmingly, particularly in under-resourced schools, that is not the way the curricular and instructional practices are designed. So we're perpetuating a certain kind of rote memorization and things that do not serve students well when they are asked to think critically, when they're asked to analyze, right? We haven't prepared them for that. And so we're really doing students a disservice by not thinking about those connection points between different skills and different disciplines. I would love for us to think very, very differently about how we educate students from preschool, even before, all the way through their educational career.
And I think the key thing you mentioned there was the idea of sort of research and knowledge. You know, we know this is the case. It's not just the fact that Mark and Heather thought this was a great idea on a Tuesday and they'd have a conversation about it. You know, the research is out there. You know, it's not something which is just hearsay. There's stuff to back this up.
Absolutely. Decades and decades and decades. I was listening to a book recently by someone who's a good friend of the Literacy Lab, Dr. Bettina Love. And she, beautifully chronicles the things that we've known about education, and yet we have not acted upon them. We've known that there's certain research that says certain kinds of things do produce positive results, particularly when we are talking about students in communities of color, low wealth communities. But then we repeatedly do not do those things. And we invest in other things that some of us are scratching our heads saying, why are we investing there? Because there actually isn't data that says that this is something that is going to be transformative for students. We will also continue to invest in things that have shown absolutely no progress for decades at a time for the students that we say we're trying to find, different ways to make progress, right? Like, it is not new that there is, I don't like to call it an achievement gap because I feel like that puts it on the student, that there's kind of an access and opportunity gap, particularly in things like literacy and math. And we do know that there are ways in which we can approach that would have the most meaningful and measurable impact for students. But we continue to make decisions and invest money in the opposite of those things, right? And so I have a lot of questions about why do we continue to do that in the face of decades and decades of research that says this is not going to move the needle.
And the other thing that always strikes me is the fact, I mean, my mum was involved in education, and it's that kind of, after so many years, the new ideas which are going to be revolutionary are the ones which you saw 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So even the new ideas aren't new. They're just a rehash of things that may or may not have worked before. But no one's actually going, none of this has worked in the way that we think it needs to. What's the new, fresh thing that we can do? And certainly on the podcast, I think the last 2 or 3 weeks when I've been sort of recording for some of the episodes coming out after Christmas, it's been talking and focusing a lot about AI and the fact that you're not really going to have a choice about how this is going to change, because the world is going to look very different very fast. And it's that adoption and understanding of what we can do and what maybe we need to do is going to be such an integral part of it. So whether we want to change or not, it's better to be sort of a leader showing what's possible than kind of having to maybe pick up the mess maybe a little bit later on.
Absolutely. We're talking about that right now at the Literacy Lab. We last year we launched our first ever strategic plan as an organization. And then through some professional development, we were introduced to this Engine 1 and Engine 2 concept for organizations that I believe originally came from the corporate world. And a lot of nonprofit folks are like, oh my gosh, yes, this is how we need to be thinking and operating. And it's, kind of doing the day-to-day work that we've been doing, that we need to do to quote unquote, keep the lights on, right? And also having a pathway forward that is about experimentation and innovation. And we are really leaning into that. And change is hard. And change is necessary. And change is going to come up and tap us on the shoulder, and we can be totally unprepared because we didn't think about it. Or we can say, what are the trends? What are the needs? And what is our role as an organization that is focused on racial and economic equity through access to literacy? What can and should we be doing? We have this standard way that we have been providing literacy instruction, and we have definitely achieved results. Is there more that we can do? Can we do better, right? Can we move the needle more for more students? And what does that look like? And that's the question that we are asking right now. If we were to diversify our services, to have some different ways in which we do this, ways that are also potentially multi-generational, because we know that literacy gaps, like other kinds of gaps, economic gaps, wealth gaps, are generational. And they are systemic, and they are rooted in communities, not the communities themselves, like the systemic factors that kind of put communities in certain situations with limited access, right? And so what would it look like to think about everything more holistically? Because it's wonderful to do things in school with students. And what about the folks who care for them every single day when they go home? Have they gotten everything that they need? And what is our level of responsibility there? Because I don't think we can best serve students. We can't best serve students without thinking about our tutors and fellows. We also can't best serve students if we are not thinking about the folks who love them and who care for them day in and day out, who probably went through similar school systems that, as we know, have been doing a lot of the same things that don't move the needle decade after decade. And so we're spending a lot of time really saying that we want to embrace change. We want to think about what that change looks like for us and center those most impacted our students, their communities, our tutors and fellows, and think about what the future of the literacy lab looks like in that context. And I will say it's easy for me because I am one who loves change. I thrive on change, right? And recognizing that there is a whole team of folks who have different relationships with change. And how do we do this in a way that our team, because the organization isn't an entity, it's the people, it's the hearts and souls of everyone at the literacy lab. And how do we ensure that we do this in a way that is thoughtful of the different relationships that folks have with change?
And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that's the one thing that's come up a lot, is the sense that it is purely about, not purely, but it is very much about relationships, and moving forward, education and life generally is going to be very much about the fact that it's how can I be more human and how can I be more of me in order to influence people around me, because the technology and, like I say, the way we structure things and the way we do it will change. But what it probably can't do is have that human element, which is the thing that I think over the last few years specifically, we really do know that's the thing you can't recreate. We need that sort of personal touch. We need that sense of community, like you say, and also that individuality, because like you said, it may be that this school is fantastic with great teachers, but the home life is really struggling for a child. It might be home life is absolutely amazing, but the school doesn't quite give you the opportunity that you need, or a combination of both, and any other sort of 100 factors which is going to affect any given child. So that flexibility and that personalized idea that you can do, like I say, because of maybe the opportunities that come through change, is a very, very exciting prospect. And I think the only thing that really sort of strikes me as concerning is that I think one of the things that the pandemic really did show was the thing that was a great opportunity, which was the fact we were able to go online and learn, also showed there were lots of people who were already struggling, didn't have access to the devices they need, or internet connections that were fast enough, or just a situation where that was going to be helpful for learning. And while we all thought, well, that's fine, we can sort that out because now that's been highlighted, I'm not sure that 3 years on, that we haven't just gone back to where we were before. And I think that's just going to probably, that gap itself may be a really integral part of what happens as we go forward. It might still be even more of a struggle.
Absolutely. I think first, to touch on the people aspect, we've made significant investments in being a people first organization. It's one of our organizational values. And we have asked ourselves a lot of questions about what does it mean to really live that? What does a people first organization look like, feel like? What kinds of decisions are made, not made in a people first organization? And, I will be the first to say, we don't have it all figured out. We make mistakes in our, efforts to be people first every day. But it is a huge priority. And I don't know if it's because so many of us, are educators, and we have learned early in our careers that we must have that connection and those relationships in order to engage in the teaching and learning process. And we've kind of brought that into the organization. Or some of us have been in organizations that have not been people first, and we know how it feels, and we want to provide, a different experience for folks at the literacy lab. So that's a really big investment that we're making. And one of the things that, when we think about what does the future of the literacy lab's work look like, doing the work in person is not an inexpensive endeavor. It requires a lot of financial resources, but also requires, a lot of time of the people, as I like to kind of like on the back end of things, like our operations folks, our HR folks, our data and evaluation folks. We have a team of 2 who specifically focus on like our grant compliance work with AmeriCorps. That's what they do, because it's just a big thing that someone, manages, right? So there's all of these things that go along with this in-person model. And there are communities that, when we would look at our philosophy about going where there's the most need, there are most likely communities that really can't afford that. They can't afford that in-person model. They could probably afford 1 tutor in an entire school. Well, that's going to serve maybe 15 to 18 students because, data says that we keep the caseload small for a particular reason, right? So like that's that's not really going to move the needle in terms of bringing about change for that school, let alone that community. So what does a virtual model look like? And we know that it can be done. We did it during the pandemic when we had no choice and we were an in-person organization that had to very quickly flip to figure out how do we do this virtually and zooming in to the homes of students. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about now is we can create a virtual model. But if the communities that we would want to support with that don't necessarily have all of the access. I was watching a show the other day where someone with, a great heart went and got laptops for a particular community and said, aha, now you have computers. And they were like, but we don't have internet. And it's like, right. So it's like we can provide a virtual model, but what is our understanding of the community's ability to have the internet access, the software and the hardware that would actually make all of that a viable option for them? So we're spending a lot of time really saying, like, what is the landscape in which we are working, to really understand what it looks like to provide equitable access to different kinds of communities, because making a solution that's geared toward a particular group of people who actually can't access it, we're just perpetuating the problems.
And also, you might have a solution for today, but we know that technology and the world may look very different next week, let alone next year or in 5 or 10 years time. And it very much has to be, the process of the journey and the relationships that you're doing, isn't it? And I think even if you feel like it's a struggle and you can't actually do it, starting from that, this is what we want to try and achieve, or the journey we want to go on, and how can we do that, really means that you have that ability to morph and to move with any given time or any given situation, as opposed to we can't do this because, or we've solved this problem now, and then sitting back and realizing that it sort of falls apart a little bit very shortly.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we have not done yet, that we are figuring out the staff capacity to be able to do, is to have a different kind of relationship with the communities. Pre-pandemic, it was very much we go to schools, we provide services in schools, the folks that we liaise with are school folks. That was, for the most part, the beginning and the end. There was always been some level of community engagement, but not something where we're really in partnership with the communities and like they really know who we are. And we really understand them, because just because we think that something might be a great option or a great solution, we don't know that until the community has said, yes, this is exactly something that is going to meet our needs. And so we're trying to figure out, what does that level of community engagement and partnership look like? Is that a whole team of people that we do not yet have at the Literacy Lab who really spends time in our regions doing that, to really bring that data back and say, these are some really high priority things from the communities, and how does this align or not with what we are thinking? And my response would be, if it doesn't align with what we're thinking, then it needs to, because the communities have spoken. And if they don't have internet, we're not going to provide computers, right? And so that is something that we are trying to figure out. And we're also trying to figure out as well, just because you're 3 doesn't mean that you don't have thoughts and opinions and perspectives on the engagement that you have with us. You most certainly do. And so what are ways that are age appropriate that we can get more information from our students about kind of what really resonates with them? What do they like? What do they not like? What are they thinking? What do they suggest in terms of what all of this looks like going forward? Because those we've identified as 2 really important missing pieces, to say that we're people first, to say that we are an equitable organization. We have to have different relationships with the communities and with the students.
Amazing. Well, I think from sort of going full circle now, it's that sense of, not only have we today sort of managed to see exactly what the amazing work that you are doing in that community feel of all the people involved, but to listen to the the thought processes, the plan, how you're growing. So I think no matter where you're listening or watching in the world, you kind of get a sense of this is what we're all thinking, or maybe what we're all striving for, or the sorts of challenges and opportunities that we can all take in. So whether we happen to, like say, be in the Boston area, or whether we happen to be here in the UK or anywhere else, it's about what we're doing to support the child that we're there, and that child's community, and what our skills and strengths are in order to do that. So yeah, Heather, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating, and keep up the amazing work. And yeah, I can't say anything other than
Thank you so much, Mark. It was just absolutely a pleasure. As you can see, I really, I thrive when I'm talking about the work and when I talk about the amazing team that I'm privileged to work with.
Oh, I love it. Well, keep up that great work. And like I said, the team and the people that I've spoken to previously from the Literacy Lab have been amazing, and also so passionate and so really clear about what that mission is. And I think that really sort of trickles down through each part of the organization. So yeah, thank you so much indeed. I really appreciate your time today, and keep up the great work and keep in contact. It'd be great to sort of see how that develops going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So many thanks to Heather. That was amazing. I really hope you've managed to get a lot out of that. And as was said, we often have a previous episode of the podcast that we like to share, and I thought this would be a great one to do. This was episode 344, and you can see here there were two guests on this particular one. We had Jonathan Hines, who was the first National Education Ambassador for the Leading Men Fellowship, and talking about his role and how he got involved in all of that, which was really, really, really key, and also just sort of explaining on how that worked, and also from Ivan's perspective as National Director of that Leading Men Fellowship. It's a community thing, and it's obviously something which you've heard today is an important thing, but with a real kind of clear objective in how we're trying to support children in such a key way to sort of really sort of benefit everybody. So let me also just give you a couple of other things that I want you to be aware of. Tomorrow's Engineers Week, as you can see there, 6th to the 10th of November. The reason I'm mentioning this is because Hannah's going to be live on this show, I think, during December. So it'll be just after this happens, but we can chat about exactly what this event was as well. But I want you to be able to sort of go and make sure that you can get involved and actually find out more about it. So again, the links to all of this are in the description. So go do and check it out. But you can see there, very easy to go to the website and then click and take part. It's coming up next week, so really, really important thing to do, and make the most of that. And then yes, when we come back and have a chance to chat about it in sort of person to person, as it were, we can see exactly how it went, what was going on, and if you were part of it and you did decide to get involved, please do come back and tell us your experience and how that was for you as well. So yeah, so if no one has any comments or anything they'd like to share in this sort of final area at the moment, I'll just left for me to say thank you very much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your evening. Please do share this show with friends, colleagues, anybody you think who will find this really interesting. We're basically here to help support children and the people that are helping to support them to help themselves for a better future. So yeah, I really do appreciate all the support that you're giving over this time. So without wasting any more of your time, thank you again, and this gives you a final way of getting involved and being able to find out more about the Literacy Lab, and I look forward to be back with you again next week.